Hi, Jason here. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create a basic blockout in Blender using primitive shapes, just like you can see in the image here, and then how to arrange it and light it, and then how to apply modifiers to create a sort of pencil effect, a sketch effect over the models, and then from there exporting those images and putting them into Photoshop and assembling them into the image that you can see here, where it has a kind of sketch-like effect, except you've done it all through modeling. So without further ado, let's get into it. We've got references here. Now, if I just go and center in on these now, of course, we've got like what appears to be like sort of like Mount Olympus, something like that. I don't quite know the full story. I get the sense. You may have explained it in the email, but it's something to do with obviously, like, ancient Greece, or it's taken influences from that. And then we've got these kind of like the stylized in work by Klaus, the artist Klaus. Again, we can kind of revisit that stylistically a little bit later. And then if I can just press that, and then this is what I sort of generated. So I basically just went into ChatGPT and just kind of got it to generate a sort of a accumulation of all those environments. Now, it's very kind of like standard here. I mean, it's all right. It's a good start, but it's not very good at doing stylized stuff. So I did get it to kind of do like sort of full color. And, it's all right as a kind of base, kind of like see what, the modeling might look like and the textures might look like. But of course, this is just like a blocking. So if I were in your shoes and I was approaching this project, then this is kind of what I'd do. I tell you what I'm also going to do before I get started. I'm going to enable my screen keys just so you can see what I'm using along the way. So hopefully you can see that in the bottom left corner. All right, so I think the best thing to do is for us just to kind of have a look and start having a look into like modeling and just seeing what see what we can do. So let us just come out of that now. Okay, so I'm going to start modeling this now. I think I'm going to sort of take my cue from this one here, and maybe even start looking at like creating a kind of like mountainside. I don't want to like maybe attempt anything too complex at the moment, but something like that, kind of like mountain with the kind of housing in there. And I think that seems to be in relationship to this. So I might do something with columns. It's not going to look exactly like that house, but something like that's got columns in them. I think it's that one, isn't it? In a kind of mountainside. So anyway, let's get to it. So I'm going to start off by, I'm probably just going to go and delete this. And I'm going to create a plane. So I'm going to go Shift and A and just make a plane and just scale that up to say like so. Also, I might just take away the floor. And also I'll just take this all the way up just so it's outside of those lines. And then I'm going to start including some geometry. So I'm going to go A, Shift A. I'll probably start with something like I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go cube, and I'm going to model one cube. And then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of Shift D and sort of multiply it. So I'm going to start by going into edit mode. I'll select one of those faces, and I'm going to go G, Z, to say something like that. And I'm going to do like an approximate shape of one of these things. So really, really basic. I'm just thinking at the moment, just basic blocking. Yeah, basic blocking, nothing too fancy. So I'm going to start adding some of these loop cuts. just to give a bit of shape. Let's put one there, and then maybe we'll add some more there. Add another one there. Right, okay. And I might even be tempted to, well, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll model it to start off with. So what I'll do is I'll maybe looking at, the peaks of the mountain. I'll go and just start going kind of a bit sort of free form. I might just put it onto the X-ray mode there and just start playing around really, just give it some shape. Might just bring that up to a peak. Something like that. And then bring that in a bit, like so, bring that out, bring that out. And even at that sort of basic stage, I'm quite tempted to, first of all, I'm going to select that, and I'll use this smooth tool, if it lets me. There we go. So create some kind of shape like that. And then I'd even be tempted to go into the sculpt mode. And then I think I'm going to start sort of pushing and pulling this around. So something like elastic grab, or what's the other one here? We'll go grab, use the grab tool and use F. And I'm just going to basically sort of pull this around now. And I'm going to use this as the kind of basis. I'm just going to kind of repeat it. It's just going to be Shift and D. And I'm just going to try and give some like a regular shape to that. Just so it's a bit more angular, a bit more jagged. And what I'm going to do from there, excuse me, is I'm going to go back into the object mode. You can go shade smooth, depending on like the amount of geometry you got there, but I'll go something like shade smooth. And I'm just basically start the basis of Shift D. And you can sort of scale this and just really just start creating a kind of scene, creating this kind of mountain. And you can change the angles as well, change the scale of it. So I think because we kind of got like, looking at that there, it's going to be something like Shift D, scale, move that out. So all we're doing now is just sort of blocking in. That's all we're doing. Something like this. Maybe even just scale that up a little bit. And just basically work your way around. You can also just sort of select some of these and just duplicate these as well. So something like that. Maybe even that. Shift D those. And then perhaps just move those around. So maybe use the rotate tool. Oops, not like that. And then just move some of these, excuse me, independently around. Okay, so it could be something like that. I could even just copy that whole lot there, not the base. Shift D. Maybe even scale. It's just basically just sort of to quickly get off the ground. I find that just simply just doing something at least can get the ball rolling and get you out of a kind of, sort of creative funk and get you into just the doing of it. Because what can happen is there can be a bit of sort of, overthinking with it. I found this with myself. I kind of like overthink, what I'm doing. And then before I know it, I've kind of like, time's gone by and I've not actually achieved a great deal because there's a bit of sort of over analysis. Anyway, so kind of got that there. Can join some of this up. So maybe what I can do is, first of all, just join these. Let's just take the camera out. We don't really need the camera. I'll just go and delete that in a minute. Let's go and deselect these. And I'm going to go Control and J. Well, we won't delete the camera. We'll just move it to one side for the time being. And also the lights. We'll take that out just for the time being. And then what I might do is I might just go and create a cube. See if we can use the Boolean tool on this and just delete. Just go and hide this. Just so I haven't got that stuff poking out from the bottom. So let's go something like up to there, say. Something like that. And then what we'll do is I'll select that, go to the generate Boolean difference, of course, and I'll go and select that. Or is it not going to do it? Let me just try it again then. Let's go and try a different way. Maybe I'll just go and remesh it. Something like that. That's fine. And then what I'll do is just go select that again. Boolean tool and using that. There we go. And then just apply that. It just means you don't have any other stuff. Don't need these. I guess these are all below the level. And then we've got Alt and H, bring our little plane back. So we've got a little bit of a plane and we've got our thing on top. And again, you can maybe even just sculpt a bit of this or smooth some of it out if need be. So I've got a bit more of an organic form there, something like that. And you can sculpt into it a little bit. If it lets us, there we go. I might just go and have a look at adding a material to this. This is just a personal preference, just so I can actually, there we go. Just can actually sort of see what's going on there. So something like that could be good. Just smooth some of this stuff out. Like so. It doesn't have to be perfect. And again, if you want to kind of add some details, like say you've got this, it's limited because there's not a lot of polygons in here, but you can sort of add a bit to it. But anyway, the purpose is to start thinking about, right, I've got that as a kind of basis there. Now, if you wanted to, you could add some more rocks around it. So if I go back into object mode, good drink, and just add, say, let's add a cube. Maybe we'll go and just subdivide that. something like that. And what we'll do is we'll kind of add in a bit of an irregularity to our cube. Make it a bit more rock-like. Go shade smooth. I might just add a material to that as well. Something like, I'll tell you what, we'll just continue using, we'll just do something really, really basic like that. Or just copy that color. There we go. That does look a bit dark. Let's just try that again. Yeah, something like that. And then I can just dot these around. So I'll just scale that down. So all I'm doing here is, I may even speed part of this video up, but just to kind of it's more about just kind of creating the scene. You can sort of copy some of these. Something like that. And then looking at that, so what we need then is to make this kind of like, I'm thinking more like sort of Colosseum, excuse me. So something like, just looking at this here, it's like a kind of, yeah, some kind of Colosseum. It's got like a roof and it's got some pillars. I think I'll do something like that. Okay, so I'm going to maybe make an area here. So I'll go back into, say, Sculpt. And I'll just build this up. Or use the draw to, is that clay tool? Oh, I need to have it selected, don't I? That would help, Jason. There we go. Back into sculpt mode. So yeah, something like, something like that. Just creating this kind of plateau. That's what I'm doing at the moment. So it's a plateau kind of, again, I might just take some of this back. Smooth some of it out. So it was a good opportunity as well to save. So I'm going to go Control and S. I'll just save this as a William tutorial, Will tutorial. Okay. Just in case it crashes. All right. So something like that. And then it can start doing things like, okay, right. So I've got that. Back to the modeling. And I'm going to bring in a cube. Or, yeah, something like a cube. Bring that into the scene, scale that down. Probably have that as a base. So I'll just, so this will kind of be like the base of it. Maybe we'll scale that down a bit more. And go back and just take some of this. I might just go and smooth or move some of this stuff away. That's probably a better tool there, something like that. All right. And then let's go back into our modeling. Well, I'm going to create some pillars. So something like cylinders are good. Something like that. And just basically just trying to keep it as basic as possible. I'm not really interested in doing a lot of detail. It's mainly just about getting some sense of a proportion, style, stuff like that. I'm going to sneeze. I beg your pardon. Okay, excuse me. All right, and then Shift D. You can use things like the array tool if you want, but I mean, I think at this stage I'm not too fussed. And then Shift D. And then what we can do is I'll just move these forward. Shift D to those to the back. And then we'll have a couple at the side. So Shift D. Something like that. And then we'll create some slabs for the roof. So again, going by the Colosseum type looking building. I mean, you could make it, we could do it more like this here, but I'm just going to try and copy that one there, which I'm going to have as this kind of, Colosseum. Okay, so Shift A. I think what we'll do is we'll create another cube. And we'll squeeze this down. See something like that. Rotate G to kind of move that. It's probably a little bit big. Scale that down. And then what we can do is we can see if we can just flip this. So go Shift and D, and then let's see if we can mirror that. There we go. Something like that. And we'll just do a little thing for the front there. So what I'll do is we'll create a little sort of triangle for the front. And that should, obviously we need to kind of adjust it a little bit. But again, this is just a block in, nothing more. So let's have a look at creating a triangle. So I'll probably do this with a plane, I think. Or I could do it with another cube. Let's have a look. Plane. So I'll go and say, oh, 90, something like that. And what I'll do is I'll put some subdivisions in. So move that to the front like so. Scale that down. Right, so that's some subdivisions. Go to edit mode. Add one there. And then what we'll do is we'll scale that in to say something like that. I think that will be all right. And we'll probably just delete these. Okay, now unfortunately the video shut down when I was recording this. So what I did was I went on from here to produce essentially what I did. I duplicated this, so I kind of copied everything, did Shift and D, and basically created another version. I'm just going to delete that. This time I basically exaggerated some of the architecture. And that was done by basically taking the original one there, going into edit mode, and basically just playing around with some of the geometry. A quite easy way of doing it is to actually go into sculpt mode, and you can use like some of the, like say, the grab tools and play around with it that way. That can be like a really quick way. Otherwise, you can just sort of use, if I just go back into the object mode, you can use things like, what is it, proportional editing. There we go. So, and then from there, what you can do is, I'm sure you've used proportional editing before, but you can essentially change the size of the influence of the brush and then just kind of move it around, really. Just kind of select parts of this and, grab it and kind of move it, where you see fit. But I strongly suggest just using the sculpting tool. So I did that one there. I also changed a little bit of the mountain, and then on the other one, so I copied that again, and then did another one. This time is actually, I think this is my favorite, and one of the reasons is it harks back to these visuals that you showed in the presentation, where we kind of got these like stylized versions of the with the buildings and things like that. So I think that is kind of more in line. So if I just go back out of that, so that's definitely like my favorite. And of course, you can do little bits and bobs with that. So, and then what I did was I created some very basic trees. That was just using things like the cone and also the cylinder, and just kind of playing around with it in that way. I also created some steps, as you can see there. And I think it's when I realized I was in the middle of doing the video that it had stopped recording. So I was just basically, I think I was in sculpt mode, and essentially just kind of tidying this up a little bit with the steps and making them a bit more visible. But anyway, so that was it with that. And I was going to basically wrap up now with this part of the video and go into the next part of the video, where I could look at basically doing a rendering of it with the modifiers, which basically gives it like a sort of cell shaded or drawn effect. So that'll be in the next part of the video. Okay, so now that we've got the model set up, we're going to be applying the modifiers. So in order to do that, we're going to need to do a little bit of a setup. First of all, we're going to need to put all of this into a collection. So I'm going to do that by just selecting, say, the cube. I'm going to right click, go to new collection, and you see that it drops in another collection there. I'm going to rename this line art. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just drag everything into there, all the models into that that folder. So click and hold, and then drag, and then let go. And now they're all in there. In fact, I think I've even got some of the background images, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so once we've done that, we need to go and put a grease pencil empty in there. So I'm going to make sure I've got that selected there. And I'm going to go to add and grease pencil and empty. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to now kind of add a line art modifier. We'll need to do that by going and selecting our grease pencil, which is there. And then if we just bring this up now, go to the modifier there, go to add modifier, generate, and what we want is line art. Now, at the moment, we can't see anything, so we need to be able to see it through the camera. So if you are on a laptop like me, you may need to go to edit and preferences and go to emulate numpad, which is there. Once you've done that, all you need to do is press 0 to bring the camera into view, then N for November, and press the camera to view. And now we're going to be seeing everything through the camera, so we can see the line art. Okie dokie, so we're set up there. A couple of things that we need to do now is with the in the modifiers, with the collection, we need to go and select our folder, which is here. And the layer, just go and select layer. And the material, we'll set that to black. So now you'll see instantly, if I just do a screenshot, say you just go or render F12, you'll see there now it's actually set up a very kind of rudimentary bit of line art with our models, but it's not looking too great. So we need to add a few other modifiers. The first modifier we're going to add is a subdivide modifier. So I'm going to go down to there like so. And let's scroll down to that. And where it says Catmull Clark, and select that and select simple. And then we're going to add another modifier. And this is going to be a noise modifier. So this will be in the deform and then go through to noise. This will allow us to kind of create some like jitter with it as well. And from here, basically what we're going to be doing is having a look at like how we can adjust it so it looks, it looks a bit more like a sketch. So, for example, I could just go, you might find a bit of lag, by the way. And also if you go into orthographic view, like I've done, and it snaps out of it, just hit 0 again and just position it. But what I'm going to aim to do is sort of let's just center in on this one, the one that I did before, say something like that, just so I can kind of get a closer look. All right. So let's just have a quick snapshot of that and see what it looks like. Now, at the moment, it's all a bit off. It looks all right, but it's a little bit too sketchy, and the line thickness it's not looking too great. So you need to use a little bit of finesse. So, for example, here, we've got the line thickness here. Now you can play around with that. You can see that sort of changing in real time. Let me just take it off there so you can actually see. There we go. Right, so again, you can play around with that. That's around about, say, 11, something like that. And with the noise, we can sort of change some of this as well. So the position, you can see that changing back and forth. I think that's quite severe. That becomes a little bit too sketchy. That's not too bad. What we're looking for is kind of like uneven kind of lines, as it would be like if a human was doing it. Then we've got the strength. We can have a play with that as well. and that'll just kind of weaken it a little bit. Again, we can play around with the kind of thickness, like so. Noise scale. So again, can I have a play with that? See what that does. But this is going to be really up to you in terms of where this kind of goes. But basically, what we want is a slight kind of anomaly. We don't want it to look entirely perfect. So again, I can just kind of play around with it. I'll do a little render of that, see what that looks like. So it's getting there. You can see there, it's still a little bit kind of rough in parts. So just need to really just continue having a bit of a play. The overlaps, like with the position, I think we probably don't want to really modify that too much. Strength-wise, might just take that down a wee bit. The line thickness, or the thickness of the of the lines there. Noise scale. Just have a quick look at that. So that's not looking too bad. You can see there we've got little bits, we've got some artifacts there, we've got part of the geometry coming through, but again, we can kind of, you can sort of take those out in Photoshop. That'll be the next part of the video, but let's just continue having a look at this. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more, just so I can get a better reading. And again, just kind of take that down. That's actually taking that up. Then the offset. It could even be something like that. Let's have a look and see what that looks like. So that could be working all right. Let's have a look now at the lighting, because at the moment, if we go through to there, the lighting's looking all right. But if let's say, just have a quick look at this one here. You may want to adjust the lighting so the shadows aren't so severe. If you want to kind of create line art, if you go to the light bulb icon here, you can take some of this down or take it up depending on what you're after. Let's say I'll make that, say, around about 500, just so it's not so harsh. And also, when it comes to the shadows, at the moment I've got shadows turned off. The shadowing can get in the way, particularly if you're trying to kind of create line art. You might want to, take it down a little bit. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just do a render of them all together, like so, and just see what that looks like. I'm going to go F12. There we go. So that's not looking too bad when I'm looking at this. In terms of, like, if you're trying to kind of create this kind of line art effect, it is kind of getting, there's little bits of the geometry that's kind of picking up from below. But actually, it's kind of adding to it. That's looking all right. And of course, you can do this, to save it out. Of course, you go to Image, go Save As, and then just put it into a folder, create a folder for it. Call it Line Art Renders. And save it as a PNG. And then you just call it whatever. Say that's 1. And then we can have a look at some of the other. So, for example, you might also, I've got a pretty good laptop, but you might have a bit of lag going on with your computer. I can sense a little bit of lag with mine, but yeah, something like that. You can, of course, play around with the camera if you want to. You can play around with the camera settings as well. So this is starting to get a little bit involved. But if you wanted to, say, let's go and select the camera wherever it is. There we go. You can play around with the angles of it. At the moment, it's set to like 50 mil. You can actually make it a bit more wide angle, say around about 35. Just means you can kind of get more of the image in. say there, and we could do like a render of that. And that's not looking too bad. That's looking all right. And what we could do is we could sort of, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a series of renders. So I'm going to go and save that out. I'll just call this 2. Call it what you like, but I'm just going to go and save it as that. And maybe like another angle there, or even something like that. I can maybe do with just creating a, if I go, where are we? Or X90, no, not that, sorry, I always get this wrong. RZ90, there we go. And then just move that back, just so we've got like a bit of a backdrop. Like so. And I can do a render of this as well, so like a different angle. Like that. Save this out. Call this 3. All right, and then let's have a look and see if there's another angle. We could have a render of this one, perhaps. Can maybe even just have a quick look at the camera again. Might just change the camera settings a bit more. Take it down to around about there, just so I can kind of get more of the mountain in, say something like that. Render that, F12. Okay. And then save this. Call this 4. And then we can have a look at the first one that we did. Say something like that. F12. And go and save this out as well. All right. So we've got some different views. And of course, you can choose the different views that you like. I'd say go for orthographic views. And you can do some angle views like that. Now we've got our renders. We can then sort of take this into Photoshop, and that's going to be the last part of this video. And this is where you can arrange your designs and then sort of present them in your portfolio. Okay, that'll be in the next part. So in this next part of the video, we're going to be looking at Photoshop, and we're going to be importing our files into there and having a play around with using some of the layers, putting it onto a nice kind of background and sort of presenting it. So first of all, we'll need to open our files. So I'm going to go to File and go Open and go and find those files. So there we go, Line Art Renders. Click and open those. And then Shift and select all of those, and then we'll open them like so. Okay, so we've got those. Now what I'm going to do though is I'm going to create a new document. So this is going to be new, and you can't see that on the screen now. I'll just bring that up and go to print and A4 and then create. So now we've got our background there. I'm going to go through to image and rotate 90 degrees clockwise. So I'm going to have this in landscape. I'm going to call this, what shall I call it? Just shrink this lettering down here. We'll just call this, what is it? Greek. Let's put this in capitals. Greek mountain visuals, or whatever you like. And mount tail, let's try that again. All right, and then I'm going to change the font of that. I'm not super keen on it, and also the size. So let's change the size. And we could have a look at, this isn't entirely essential. I'm just sort of saying this is something you can sort of do along the way. Let's just get like a nice font. Gothic's that's quite nice. Maybe we could use that. Something like that. All right. And of course you could have the title of the, the project on there as well. I'll change that to black, I think. Right. I want a nice background on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to, say, I'll just bring my window up here just so you can see it. Go to something like Pexels is pretty good. It's like a free website where you can kind of get images. And what I want is I'm going to search for, like, say, old paper. It's always nice to kind of like use something where you've got, you can put, let's put that in our lineup renders, where you can just put it onto a nice background as opposed to like just plain white. So I've got some old paper there. Let's go back to Photoshop. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that file, which is there. And again, because it's like ancient kind of Greece, it'll probably suit it as well, something that kind of looks old. I'm going to press Control and C and copy that. And then go back to our file. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put that in place like so. Bring that down. So just get it so it's kind of doing the entire thing. Of course, you can use whatever paper you like. That is now sitting above our text, so we just need to drag that down to there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to bring our images in. So say something like this. Let me just move that out of the way. And what we can do is I can use the marquee tool there to copy that. So I'm going to press Control and C to copy it. I'm going to go through to back to our project and go Control and V. So we've got our image in there. And then you can sort of position it like so. Now at the moment we can't see through the paper. So what we can do is we can go over to the right here and go to multiply. We can see, have a look, see what that looks like. And we can just go through and just see which parts would suit it best in terms of what we want is essentially is we want to kind of make it transparent. So that's pretty cool. I'm liking that. It's still keeping the line art. So let me just go and have a quick look. So you can still see the line art in there, but it's knocked out the background. Yeah. So this kind of nice effect going on there. We've still got a bit of the background going on. So depending on what you're using, you might be using a Wacom tablet, or even if you're just using a mouse, what we can do is we'll have the soft round brush there selected. I'll increase the size of that. And this is on the eraser. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dust around these edges like so, just to get rid of those edges. Just take the size of the brush down a little bit. Okay. Cool. Right, so we've got that there, and might even just enlarge that a little bit. Now, if you need to kind of like darken this or anything like that, you can do. If I just zoom in a bit there, you can play around. So, for example, if I press Control and L, you can play around with the levels like that and make the lines a bit darker, or make parts of it a bit darker if you want, if it suits. It kind of brings the contrast up a little bit more. You can access that, by the way, if you go to Image and Adjustments, and you can play around with the stuff there, like the levels and all that, whatever. That's just a quick key. But that's not looking too shabby. I think that's kind of looking all right. And that'd be like, as a sketch, so like an iteration of that. So we've kind of got that there. Let's go back now to some of the other renders that we've done. So we've got that nice one there. I'm going to go the same thing as before. I'm going to go and copy that. Control and C, go back to our untitled and press Control and V. Same as before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move that, say, I don't know, say somewhere like there. And I think we had it on, was it hard light? It was hard light, wasn't it? Yeah, there we go. And then I can use my eraser tool, change the size of the brush. Not too much, and not too little. Something like that. And then just sort of take parts of that away. Like so. So then you can sort of start to kind of see like, so for example, you could put some text in here or just talk about and say, well, I did these different designs. This is the bit, this is the one I quite liked with the exaggeration. And then you could show like different details of that. Let's see if we can find, so we've got another view there. We could use that one. Again, you can, you know, don't have to do it all on one sheet. You could just do like maybe a few on one. And then, you know, and then sort of, you know, change it around. So I'm going to go to the hard light on that. Move that down to there. But also just have a kind of play around. You sort of say, okay, that's looking all right. I might want to, again, play around with the levels on that. Make it a little bit more contrasty. To say something like that. That could do, and then using the eraser tool, just so it looks a bit more seamless when you're doing it. Yep. And it can start to kind of look like, you know, like drawings that you've done on the page. And then like the way that you compose it is you could have something like that. And then you could add some text, of course. And you could sort of say, you know, I don't know why it's lost the text there, but I'll just move that there. Let's go back to our text. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring our little box back and just take the size of that down. It's way, way, way too big. Say around about there. This is if this was like a sort of presentation. So you could take that, for example, there. Let's use the move tool. Let's put that into place. And they could have some text. And let's copy that like so. I just held down Shift and copied that. Right. And then it can literally be, I'll just put some gobbledygook in there just to, just as text, you know, pretend text, right? Something like that, right? And I might just take the size of that text down. What we at? Yeah, so I have to highlight it. Let's say it's something like that. So this would be your text describing what's going on in the scene, that kind of thing. Could even just move these over a little bit to say there. Could duplicate that. Just going to hold down Alt and just duplicate that text. Don't need that text there. Just move that up to say something like that. And then essentially you've got your page. So basically you've modeled it, you've done your line art, and then you can arrange it on there. And these could all be like, you know, basically you could be taking like a block out and and then putting it in a sketch kind of form on the page before you actually start to work into it. So this is how the pros work in the industry anyway. You'd have your your initial kind of block out. This is what you'd be showing in like a meeting, and then you go from there and kind of go, all right, well, I quite like this design, but we wanted this a bit pointier or this a bit more angled. And then basically you do it from there. And then once you've kind of like got the overall shape, that's when you start putting all the modeling details in, doing all the, loop cuts and extrusions and, and then, UV unwrapping and maybe even putting some textures on there, depending on, what level of detail you go into. I think lastly, also for stuff like this, it's quite a good idea to have a sort of silhouette figure. So I could go like silhouette, man, say for example, see what it brings up. Probably need something like, I need something a bit clearer than that. I think that was all right. Just like a figure really, but I needed something fairly kind of generic. That's the only thing. So that could be on something like stood. Let's have a quick look. Otherwise, I'll just have a look on Google. Yeah, these are a little bit too stylized. So what I'll do is I'll just go silhouette man and something like, let's go to images. What I'm after is like something like generic. So in fact, we could say silhouette ancient. Let's try this. Ancient Greek man. That's a bit more like it, isn't it? So it could be something like, these aren't looking too bad, are they? Something like that. Again, I mean, I'd advise you to kind of use, use your own artwork, but I think even for something like this, just to kind of, this is just purely for reference. Go copy image. And then what I can do is I can paste that in there and we'll do the same treatment on this. If it lets us, let's have a look. Hard light, maybe multiply. Yeah, multiply is better. And then this is purely for scale. So if I zoom in a little bit, I can maybe have something like this character here. Right, like that. Copy that. Now it's going to, what it'll do is when I paste that back in, it's going to change it back. So it's not a problem. I'm just going to go back to multiply. Let's just scale that up a little bit. But scale-wise, it's probably not far off. In fact, it could even be a little bit large for what it is. So you could have like a character there for scale, which is not too bad, that. So you could put like a figure in there for sort of scale, just to sort of show that kind of, ratio. I'd probably like, you could put a character in there as well. Perhaps what we'll do is, we'll go and flip that. So we can have a character there just to show character in situ, like thus. And then what we can do is we can copy that. So I can go with my selection tool and go Alt, drag that down, and then we'll have a character there at the bottom, and maybe we'll just have that character facing in. But that is pretty much it. So you can see you can actually achieve some quite impressive results just by the use of really a bit of basic modeling, doing some rendering with some modifiers, and then putting it into Photoshop. And hey presto, you've effectively got sketches without actually sketching. So it's lots of fun to be had. And of course, you can get some like bits of all the details in there which really help. So things like the shading to kind of give a sense of volume. But But yeah, well, hopefully you've found that useful. It's a bit of a long video, but hopefully you can now sort of take that and have a play around with it, see what results you get. And of course, by all means, if you want to do something and send it over for me to have a look at, I'm more than happy to do that and give you some feedback. But that's it. See you next week. Until then, have a great weekend. Hope you found the video useful, and we'll catch you in the next one. Okay, take care. Bye for now.